So in this video I'll share my workflow for making cinematic reels on my Sony FX3 and then editing them and grading them on DaVinci Resolve. So let's get right into it. How to shoot. First, obviously you shoot in S-Log3, but for this I like to use display LUTs to preview the color grade that I'll do later. I've made my own LUTs to basically simulate the eventual color grade that I'll give my videos, at least close to it. So this is not really for monitoring the exposure or the settings as much as it is for pure artistic inspiration. And in my opinion, it makes a big difference to kind of see the preview of the grade and to see the world in a cinematic way already in camera. So it's a good idea to use a display LUT that matches your own editing style. When it comes to the shot selection and the lens selection, you gotta keep in mind that the reel is gonna be viewed on a smaller screen. This means that the compositions, in any case, should be more minimalistic. So try to get a good mix of wide shots and then more detailed shots, maybe with some background blur for the added cinematic effect. Lately, my favorite lens has been the Sigma Art 35mm f1.4 because it's just a good mix of wide and detail potential as well as low light performance with that f1.4. I've also used the Sony 24 and my favorite vintage lens, the Helios 55. Now, very important, you should shoot hooks. Good reels, even if they're cinematic, will have hooks. So remember to shoot focus pulls or pan your camera from side to side or down to up. This is an essential step for getting your reels viewed. The first second. You can use the focus hold button on your lens and then release it, even if you're using a autofocus lens, to do a really smooth focus pull without camera shake. Speaking of camera shake, instead of using a gimbal, I just like to use active stabilization and then walk very carefully. Because of the faster pace of reels, all I need is 1 or 2 seconds of really smooth footage. So this tends to be good enough, even if the rest of the footage is a little bit shakier than a gimbal would be. Now, once I'm confident that I got enough shots, I import everything on my timeline on DaVinci Resolve. I make a basic grade, basically with just a LUT and a color space transform, and maybe adjust a little bit just to match the exposure and decide color for the shoot. And then I just copy it on everything on my timeline. Now it's time to watch the footage and get the best possible shots and cut everything else. So I just make a rough cut with a rough color. And once I have a nice montage out of this, I don't worry about timing it to music or sound effects just yet. Actually, I prefer to do that later on my phone. More about that later. But now I just prefer to grade the footage individually, meaning perfecting the grade. And for that, I use either my own LUTs or some of the built-in LUTs on DaVinci Resolve, make some adjustments, possibly even power windows. And as a last step, I use Dehancer for grain, especially if there's a lot of fog, because you cannot have these kind of gradients on Instagram because it just ruins the quality and introduces a lot of banding. So to work around, I use a lot of grain. You can also just use the DaVinci grain, but I have a Dehancer, so I prefer to use that. If you're interested in getting Dehancer, I do have a promo code in the bio as well. Not a sponsored video, I just have the promo code from working with them previously. And then I export everything in 4K H.264 and airdrop the footage onto my phone. I prefer to use CapCut to time the footage and the cuts to current trending songs because I like to preview the footage on my phone and try a couple of different options. And then I also use sound effects on CapCut and re-export for optimal quality because CapCut is really good at exporting for the phones. And this way I don't have to go back to my MacBook. If I want to change the song or the sound design, I can just do everything on my phone and see exactly how it's going to look on Instagram. And you can watch my next video where I explain exactly how I get the best possible quality out of CapCut, including a new tool that is very important that I just released that makes a huge difference when it comes to exporting cinematic reels for the best possible playback on the phone.